All right, that sounds good. So just as Nicole said, happy Open Education Week. We're so glad to see all of you here. As before in the previous 3 sessions, so many wonderful names, scholars, practitioners in the list. I know that your work has definitely influenced our work at Open OK State, and we appreciate the opportunity to come together and kind of think and collaborate about how we might help each other move forward efficiently, effectively, and with energy. My name is Kathy S. Miller. I'm the coordinator of Open OK State at Oklahoma State University. I'm part of this endeavor as a representative of DOERS3. And when Anna can probably explain better what that is, because I get the words consortium and symposium, all those mixed up, but it's a group of organizations that advocate for open practices in the United States and Canada. So this series of webinars are co-organized by 3 networks and organizations, DOERS3, which stands for Driving OER Sustainability for Student Success and represents system and state province-wide OER initiatives. Oh, there we go. I should have just read the script from the beginning. Sorry about that. NCOER, which is the National Consortium of Open Educational Resources, which represents the regional compacts and its member states, including U.S. territories and affiliated states, and SPARC, which represents libraries. This process started because our respective organizations have been talking about how we can better coordinate our work with each other, recognizing that we have complementary networks and areas of focus. The idea of a national strategy kept coming up, or the need to more effectively coordinate, not just among our groups, but as a broader field. Our 3 groups organized a presentation at Open Ed 23, where we discussed the challenges the OE field faced. And it was clear that there's both interest in and a need for a broader conversation that's open to everyone. We held 3 webinars in February and shared an open call for input, which generated a lot of interest and some great ideas. The goal of today's webinar is to report back on the conversations from February, gather input from the community on some of the takeaways as we understand them, see them, and discuss where we might go from here as a community, how we can support each other and work together to advance this wonderful field. So we've got a Menti set up, and Aisha will give you some instructions on that here in a minute. We would love to have you share in the chat who you are, where you're from, kind of how you're positioned in this effort. And we know this is a group that's very comfortable interacting in the chat. So we look forward to seeing you there. We'll report out the webinar results. And then we also have some additional questions that we want to share to kind of focus some of the understandings that we feel like we've come away with, give the community a chance to help maybe nuance some of those. And then just in general, how can we help each other and bring energy to this? Aisha is going to tell us a little bit more about the Menti.
Aisha, you're on mute.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Aisha. Thank you so much, Kathy, for that introduction. I am here today representing SPARC, and I'm excited to be part of these conversations and see a lot of familiar names in the audience as well as new names. So as Kathy said, we will be using Mentimeter for this conversation. So my colleague is going to drop the link into the chat, which you can click and it will take you directly to the Mentimeter. Or you can go to menti.com and enter the code on the screen. And if you prefer to use your phone, you can scan that QR code and go straight to Mentimeter. So with that, we wanted to see who's in the room and also give you all a chance to get set up with Mentimeter. So we're just going to start off with some basic questions. First one is, what state do you work in? And if you don't work in the US, share which country you're coming from. So Texas is in the middle and California, that is no surprise. We have New York, Virginia. I am based in Maryland. I see Maryland there too. Pennsylvania. Illinois, Hawaii, that's wonderful. A little bit early for you all. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so we already have 88 responses. That's great. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, what is your professional role? So interested to see what role everyone is coming in with. Director, librarian. For the previous 3 webinars, librarians were also the top coming in, so it's no surprise, really the heart of the community. A lot of administration, OER director, you have some state government, research associate, campus bookstore, researcher, OER librarian, professor, consultant, IT director. That's very interesting. Okay, so the answers are slowing down a bit. Vendor, SREB, amazing. So the last question we have to get you all familiar with each other is, how many years have you considered yourself part of the open education community? So we're seeing 3 to 5. I am actually hitting, I think, wow, it'll actually be tomorrow will be my 3-year anniversary at SPARC. So I'm about to be in that 3 to 5 category. Seeing a lot of 11 plus, that's amazing. And also a lot of newcomers, love that. 6 to 10. So all these perspectives are highly valued. We want the new people, the people who have been here a long time. Okay, these answers are slowing down, so I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Christina, and feel free to share it in the chat. Especially, I'm really interested in those 11 plus, as well as the newcomers, how you got involved in open education.
Thanks, Aisha. Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Riemann Murphy. I'm the Open and Affordable Educational Resources Librarian at Penn State, and I'm also a VPO for SPARC. And I'm going to get us started beginning to sharing out the results from our February conversations. And just to remind everyone, whether it was quite a few weeks ago that you attended, or if you're actually attending today for the first time, the conversations were really framed around the question, do we need a national strategy? And that was meant to be a provocative question, because all of us really want to hear from the community what those views are. And, whether it's a yes, a no, a maybe, a not sure. And we absolutely had a mix of views come through in these conversations. National strategy could mean many things. And you all kind of gave some amazing ideas. And so we want to keep exploring that. Also, some things that surfaced were, if a national strategy isn't what we need, then what do we need? And just a reminder that while the conversation is focused on the United States higher education, all perspectives are welcome and continue to be welcome. There's a lot the US we have to learn from other countries around open education. So just to get us started, I want to share out what came to these conversations and who is represented. So we had more than 250 participants from 48 states and a few Canadian provinces, a mixture like we have today of people working in various sides of open education. While that's an amazing number of participants, we do recognize that this is a small sample size and by no means represents the entire community. We'll be talking a little bit later today about how can we do more outreach to get a more accurate view of where the community stands. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to talk about our next couple questions and what results we got.
You bet. And I thought I saw South Africa today, but on that first couple screens. So if we've got folks from other continents, we're so glad to have you here. So one of the questions we presented in these conversations is, what's the end goal you're working toward through open education? And it was great to see some things that I know resonate with the work and the reasons for the work at our house, so to speak, and hopefully this resonates with your work as well. If you are not seeing a reason that you think should be represented, today is the perfect time to make sure that gets captured. And in case you're folding laundry or on the road, only listening, I'll go ahead and read what's on the screen. But the end goals that surfaced were student success, inclusion and empowerment, student centeredness, reducing costs, equitable outcomes, accessibility, and I think that like access as in being able to come to the table, but also accessibility as being able to engage with what's going on at the table, to use kind of a wacko metaphor, but and then also access to knowledge, opportunities in the scholarly conversation. So if there are other things that you feel should be captured there, please take advantage of this opportunity today to toss that in either later on or drop it in the chat. So the next question that we looked at was, what are the greatest successes or strengths of open education? And what a fun question to be able to consider right now together during Happy Open Education Week. But the ones that popped up as the well, largest font, right? If it was a word cloud, cost saving, and this is mostly a frequency analysis, but cost saving, customizability, flexibility, the ability to adapt it, also centering academic freedom, right? And drawing on the expertise of our scholars and instructors. Accessibility, again, as a success, community and collaboration coming together and building these wonderful experiences, and then student involvement. And I think it's really great to see how much alignment there is between what we see as the successes we've experienced so far as a community and the reasons that we're doing the work. We're of course not as far as we hope to go, but it's wonderful to be able to celebrate that we've made any movement forward at all together. And Christina will share out about the next couple questions.
Okay, so one of the questions that we asked was, what are the greatest challenges, threats, or gaps facing open education? And here what surfaced over and over again was financial sustainability, publisher practices, awareness and understanding, as well as a lack of infrastructure and coordination. And on the sort of kind of to talk about those things, we also asked you what would transform your open education work. And some of these, of course, align with exactly what people said in the previous question about their greatest challenges, threats, or gaps. So funding and staffing, of course, right? The same thing that is a threat is also something that would transform our work. Institutional, faculty, and policy support. More coordination and less duplication surfaced very frequently. A fourth thing that surfaced was professionalization and recognition of the open education field. And then finally, at a number of the sessions, people were talking about more centralized information as well as discoverability of the resources. And Aisha's going to take us through our next couple.
Thank you, Christina. So the next question we asked was, what priorities or objectives would you want a national strategy to achieve? So as you can see, there's a recurring theme for a lot of these answers, which is funding. Funding is needed in all avenues of OE work. So that was a recurring theme across a lot of these questions. We also have coordination and collaboration. And again, with the point that Christina brought up last time, deduplication. And then another theme that came out a lot was just a central place for like a website, which is mainly means like information to get about open education, and then communication and repository. We had a lot of love for a central repository as well as a replacement for Twitter, which is where that communication piece comes in. That was brought up across all three webinars where people were just saying that they miss Twitter and they miss having a place to connect with the community. So wanting to once again have a place where people can connect with each other in a safe and effective manner. So the last two are community agreed upon vision, framework, standards. So like what we are working towards, what's the framework, what's the standards within our community, and having it be something that is community agreed upon. I feel like that point is really important to emphasize, not having someone set the vision, framework, and standards, but having something that is agreed upon and is a consensus amongst the community. And then the last part is legislation and policy advocacy, legislation that supports OE, and then support in policy advocacy on the local level as well as on the national level. And then for this, we wanted to really get like, what wouldn't you want from a national strategy? What would be counterproductive to your work? So with that, we have loss of academic freedom, which makes sense because one of the strengths listed earlier was academic freedom. So we wouldn't want that strength to be taken away from the OE community. Mandates, which goes into as well as like one size fits all strategies that don't take in the uniqueness of each state and area. I know that I was in a few breakout rooms during the webinars where people really didn't want the uniqueness of each state and how, we're a huge country and each state differs so highly. They don't want that to be forgotten in a quote unquote national strategy, and to really have that be highly considered that each state has their unique needs and are all at different parts of their OER advocacy or OER implementation process. And then additional repositories. So in the last one, we talked about central repositories. What would be counterproductive to that is adding more. So that was a big theme as well. And then the last one, which I really like that was brought up, is replication of power systems. So not becoming the very power systems that we are trying to combat against, and not recreating those systems and implementing marginalization in the same way that we are trying to fight against that, and making sure that we are not becoming the very problem we're trying to fight against. So I love that that was a theme that was brought up. And yeah, with that, I can pass it on over to Kathy.
I will bat it right on over, I think, to Nicole. So it was fun to touch the ball for a second.
All right.
Yep.
Oh,
Is it
this
me?
me? I can
Well,
go.
question. Yeah, go ahead and go. I thought it was you. Yeah, go.
All right. So what would a community-driven process to develop a national strategy look like? Oh, hi, I'm Nicole Allen, Director of Open Education for SPARC. So I think this was a really important question, and I think will inform where later on in the conversation, when we talk about next steps, some things that came through really clearly is the importance of including students in this process, and also including K-12 and not forgetting about K-12 in this work. Engagement and participation from the broader community, thinking about representation, making sure, we're thinking about all states, different types of institutions, different professions. This is such a broad and diverse field. And there's so many different areas where we haven't worked really hard to bring people in. So thinking very deeply about that. Also came through clearly that transparency and accountability is important, that, even just engaging in more conversations like this that invite, whoever's able to come to the table, and also sharing out information about conversations that have happened. And then also global alignment is something that came out, which I think is really important, that, the focus of this conversation is the US national context, but there's so many ways we can learn from other countries, align with the Sustainable Development Goals, and think about how the US can be part of the global community and thinking about advancing open education. All right. And in terms of breakout room themes, these are some of the things that came out in the discussions after we did the Mentimeter. So everything you've heard so far is sort of structured data that we got through Mentimeter. And these are just some additional observations that came through: the importance of considering K-12 in addition to higher education, even though this sort of started as a higher education focused thing. There's a lot of recognition that artificial intelligence is critical right now and very important for open education to consider how we are orienting ourselves to it, but there is uncertainty about how to approach that and where it fits in and where the opportunities are. Recognition that state environments range widely, and we need to be able to accommodate different political environments, different structures of higher education institutions, different types of capacities and organizations within states, and just different needs and priorities across states. There was a lot of rethinking about whether strategy is even the right word for this conversation. And I think that is going to be one of our big takeaways, that, perhaps strategy isn't what we need precisely. So there was a lot of just like questions about like, what is a strategy? What could a strategy look like? And you know, I think we acknowledged going into this conversation that that was a potential outcome. And the need for more people of all different backgrounds to be part of these conversations. There were a lot of people who are, you know, missing from the rooms, and that was acknowledged in many breakout rooms. And you know, coupled with the, you know, concerns over certain voices not being heard and others being heard too loudly, and you know, making sure to think deeply about those, you know, power structures, and making sure we're not replicating harmful ones, as Aisha said before.
Yeah, and I'll jump in again here. This is Kathy again. One of the things, as we were also speaking about certain voices not being captured, was precarious faculty, non-contingent faculty folk, you know, like our adjuncts or our folks that are teaching at several different institutions. How do we make sure that we're bringing them into the conversation as well, that are moving around and a little harder to capture? So no one, well, I don't want to say no one, you aren't supposed to say that ever in research, but a solution to that hadn't quite surfaced. And so I think that's part of today's conversation, that you'll find there are opportunities to suggest additional places that information could be shared out while we're finding our way back together, to make sure that people like adjuncts and things are captured and their voices are included.
All right. Oh, I think this is me too. All right. So before we move on to engaging in more discussion among this group of people, we did just want to share a couple of higher level takeaways from the conversation, and sort of where things stand so far. So, you know, to answer the broader question of do we need a national strategy that we started with, I think that was very clear from the conversations that there is support for something at the national level. There's a lot of enthusiasm and interest for something, even if it is not specifically a strategy, you know, recognizing that there, when we asked people a yes, no, maybe question about do we need a national strategy, we did have a mix of responses, but I think there is a lot of interest in something. Another thing that was striking is that end goals do differ among people working in this field, but there is a shared purpose of making education more open and equitable, and I think that comes out throughout the results. We're united perhaps less by a common specific end and more by a common means, and that there are many ways that we can think about how to work together to advance our practice of open education to meet those ends that differ across, you know, states and contexts. So, and I think the biggest thing that came away, you know, certainly to me, was the need for coordination. That word kept coming up across all of the different discussions, and also the deduplication of efforts. And I think, as a big takeaway from this, I think, you know, where the conversation needs to go from here is perhaps less specifically about strategy and more about how do we coordinate, how do we take the incredible field and communities that have developed around open education, all of the amazing work that's happening in states and different networks and national organizations, regional organizations, local projects, and think about how we work to coordinate towards something that is perhaps, you know, can accomplish work that's greater than the sum of its parts. But also recognizing that there are concerns about, you know, any kind of conversation that's talking about a national strategy or, you know, coordinating something nationally, that there are concerns about top-down mandates or one-size-fits-all approaches that are exclusionary or replicating harmful structures. So, you know, that is an important takeaway. And then I think finally, just recognizing that another theme that kept coming up was advocacy and how to better equip advocacy work as a common thread across all of the different types of things people talked about. All right, and I think we have one more set of takeaways to talk about. So recognizing that I think the conversation is shifting away from maybe a national strategy and more toward coordination, we looked at sort of across all of the results and asked, what are the common objectives here? What are the common strategic objectives that the field might work toward coordinating on. What are the kinds of things that we could work toward that uplift and benefit everybody's work? And unsurprisingly, the first item on that list is funding and capacity. Getting support from administrators and decision makers is another. Figuring out how to get better coordinated, like infrastructure and shared resources, whether that's, you know, communications, talking points, information, repositories kept coming up. I'm not sure that necessarily is what we mean, because that a lot of that infrastructure already exists, but talking about, you know, shared standards and voluntary standards that we can develop and voluntarily adopt and adapt as needed. Recognition of open education as a professional or scholarly field is something that, you know, has the potential to really impact anybody who's working in open education, whether your work is touched by any of the other things that we've discussed. And then finally, addressing inclusive access and the co-opting of OER language that makes it harder to advocate for OER, and also the broader systemic changes that are happening at an institution that makes it harder to do open education work. So these are not meant to be set in stone or final, but they are takeaways from the conversation and are meant to sort of summarize some of the key potential objectives that we could talk about if we were to have a broader conversation about national coordination. And we are going to come back to these as we move into the discussion. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I'm not sure who.
Hi,
Aisha,
everyone.
no, we're all amok. Aisha, yeah.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for wrapping that up. So with that, we are going to jump into the open-ended questions part of this presentation, where you all will get the chance to share your thoughts. So I just want to let everyone know that your responses in Menti are anonymous, and we may be sharing the results of these conversations publicly. So just be aware of that. And if you, for whatever reason, don't want your results to be shared publicly, I encourage you to put them in the chat instead, where we won't be sharing the chat publicly. So just sharing the instructions once more, my colleague will put the link into the chat. For those who join late, hop onto Menti, you can go to menti.com and put in this code, or you can use your phone and scan the QR code, or you can just click the link in the chat, which will take you right to where you need to go. And with that, we just want to know how many of you attended one of the live sessions in February, and how many of you is this your first time with us? Okay, so a good chunk of you haven't, which is completely fine. That means we are getting new voices and new opinions, which is amazing. And a good chunk of you have. So welcome back. Thank you for joining us again. And happy to see what else you all have to say on this topic. So we have about almost 100 responses on this slide. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next question. So I know we just threw a lot of information at you, but we just want to know what from the report out resonated with you the most. And you can put in multiple answers. So if there's a few things you want to share, go ahead and put them in. And no more repositories. That's so funny to me. I like that one. Coordination, funding, sustainability, coordination. The need to collaborate with students. Yes, we cannot leave students out of this. Oh, I like this one. We're finding our way back together. We missed each other. Need for national coordination. So I'm seeing coordination as a big theme. I'm seeing funding and sustainability as a big theme. Move away from national strategy. Yeah, so that was a theme as well in the last conversations. No top down. Networking, yes. Not replicating harmful power structures. Yes, that resonated with me a lot as well. Opening communications, making sure voices are heard. The power of our community to coordinate our efforts. The list of reasons and needs was similar to what I would have suggested. That's great to hear. including as many voices as possible. Yes, and we're going to get into that a little bit later on how we can include more voices and who we should be reaching out to. We need to organize, including students, absolutely. The goals of student success and access to knowledge. Cultural and institutional change. Yeah, I saw that a lot in the previous webinars talking about we need a cultural shift. Finding ways to connect with other opens. Common cause. Collaboration. How sensible everyone is. I love that. Meet instructors where they are, all methods of affordability. Further professionalization of the field. Absolutely. Figuring out ways to work together for funding. Some have too much and some have too little. Well, with that, I can go ahead and pass the next set of questions over to our next presenter.
So as we look at this, is there anything you felt, we're so sensible. Is there anything you felt was missing from the report out? And I saw a couple of suggestions on the previous slide. I hope you go ahead and add them in on this one also, so we've got it captured here. What did you feel was missing from the report out? So where do we go next? Next steps? Yep. How will it be different? Yeah, from everything we've done. Right. Innovation. Okay, so the innovation of open education, if someone wants to expand on that, like drop more in the chat or maybe add another card to the Menti and tell us kind of what you're thinking with that. Concrete action items, different stakeholders. What do leadership structures actually look like? Oh, wow. Yep. Explicit that we need a lobby to advocate for equity in higher ed. Right. And what that would look like when some of us are in positions where we can't lobby, I think, as I understand and find my way through some of the definitions of these words, operational ones, finding solutions. Let's see. And I don't think I have scroll control, but it looks like someone's saying, what's a summary of the current national strategizing efforts? That was exciting. Who would lead us? What orgs would be involved? How do we make sure no one gets left out? Yep. I love this. If a national strategy isn't what we need, then what else? And I don't think that was in the report out. I think that's also, like we didn't come to next steps ideas. So love that we want to see something happen with this. But when are we starting a lobbying organization for all this? Who's driving the work? Right. Include all the voices, but if it's voluntary, no one needs one to drive it, so it gets done. I love that about this community, that we are at least trying to be intentional about compensation and things like that. If someone felt like nothing was missing, thank you. Folks say no new repositories, but not that current repositories also need to be improved for discoverability and access, better metadata. Right, and how do we find that balance, right, between contextualization, but and bringing ourselves together, metadata controlled language, and yet still space for the uniqueness and the valuable voices that are important to all of us as we do this work. Communication needs. So yeah, I think if you saw in the chat, someone said the first next step should be agree on where we're going to go. Indigenous knowledge. And if you're at the OE Global closing keynote, and it was fabulous, and I would bungle the name and the title and everything. So maybe Google that and find that out, because it was really an impactful keynote to me. What has definitely worked, right? That's great that we don't have specifics about, what we know has been effective. SPARC is amazing. Make sure that we capture that, and that is the case. We appreciate their work. Some comments about inclusive access and understanding what the federal government's doing. What else is, how do we build connections with other open groups and open hardware, software, access science, and with other teaching and learning groups? And it looks like there's a robust conversation about that in the chat. So if you are just driving and listening, if you have a chance to pull over and open up that chat on your phone and see that conversation, it's been interesting, and you might find you'd like to be part of it. How do you make participation in the creation of OER accessible to individuals with a variety of disabilities, including those who need accommodations? What a great question. Yeah, how do we make it easier for a variety of people to come into that OER creation space. So passing it along to, I think, Christina.
Okay, so we're gonna play with a ranking question. So how would you rank, now that you've seen kind of the objectives that surfaced from our 3 conversations, how would you rank the importance of these objectives for your work? And you just slide the little colorful button to wherever you want it to be. The right side 10 is most important. Okay, so it looks like lots of things are very important to all of us. Leading at the top, are there actually, it looks like in the order that they are on the screen. So funding and capacity, support from administrators and decision makers, those are sort of neck and neck. I feel like I'm calling a horse race. Better coordinated infrastructure and shared resources, and then addressing inclusive access and co-opting of language at the sort of the 4th most important. And then finally, not important, but people have ranked recognition of open education as a professional scholarly field as sort of, I don't want to say the least of the importance, but have given the others priority. Okay, whew, that was stressful, the horse race. Okay, on to the next question. So an open-ended question here, right? What other objectives would you like to see national coordination work towards? Whether they were ones that maybe you surface at a conversation, or if for many of you, this looks like this is your first time here. So this is a great opportunity to share in the Mentee what you hope to see. Okay. So we have a convening of the field. Some new ideas here that I haven't seen any of them. I love this. National awards, lobbying has come up a few times. Considering OER as part of affordability, not the only path, student organizing as well, a clear comm strategy. I don't feel like I'd seen that before. I see lobbying coming up, an eye towards global networking. Yeah, right. So being less sort of US focused. Students is coming up in a couple places. Welcoming ways for new folks to get involved. I love the OER Clubhouse idea, or I love the idea, right? Addressing the OER Clubhouse, right? It's a great way. How can we be open and welcoming to others in the field? Someone said it's great to see that we have so many stakeholders, but would love to see a lot more stakeholders from different professions involved here. Rapid response strategy for emerging challenges or opportunities. Okay. I see repositories coming up in a couple different ways. Someone suggested rather than another repository, a shared database, more opportunities for coordination among institutions. Coordination is coming up again among state legislatures. Giving open education a face. Interesting. And students again is popping up there. Okay, so another open-ended question. So what are some ways that stronger national coordination could benefit your work? And I know we asked this, but now that maybe perhaps we've all had some time to think about it over the last month, would love to hear what folks are thinking now. Creating more jobs. Why am I forgetting what the Bureau of Labor Statistics, what's that called? The job profile. Getting open education in there. Yeah, creating more jobs, increase credibility with faculty, some benchmarking for the field, not reinventing the wheel, but learning from our peers. I see that coming up again, lending a helping hand to each other, right? That duplication is coming up, not duplicating what somebody's already done, less isolation. Absolutely. There's so many of us that are the person at our institution. making OER easier to promote, considering workload, get more into the academic zeitgeist. Absolutely. Centralization is coming up as well to coordinate efforts, right? Not a centralized thing, but a centralized way to coordinate, which I love that. Capacity building services, and then some data actually suggestions here, right? Correlation of national data to OER adoption, titles, work with other organizations, making OER more attractive, and also getting instructors involved and helping educators have an easier time understanding what this thing even is. Absolutely. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Annika for the next couple questions.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annika Manny. I'm a principal at Edbridge Partners. I also serve as the program manager for the DOERS Consortia and as MEC's Midwestern Higher Education Compact's OER coordinator. So I see lots of familiar faces in the room. Good to see you all. So I'm going to lead us through our last two questions, and then we're going to have time to go into our breakouts. So the first one is, what next steps would you like to see? So we saw some comments earlier that we hadn't directed next steps, and that's because we wanted to ask you what you thought. Our three organizations, DOERS, SPARC, and NCOER, are committed to starting this conversation and continuing to coordinate it as far as we can, but we want to know what you'd like to see. So more onboarding with faculty and program directors, a group or organization stepping forward to take ownership, something concrete, agree, metadata standards, identify some priorities and get going. I love that. As a project manager, I'm all for it. A network, orientation toolbox, toolkit, some structure for national coordination, second in concrete, a means or process of finding and soliciting support on open education work, more networking opportunities, funding needs. Go back and talk to everyone already involved at the state level. That's great. Maybe I'll put that on our folks that are representing different state level consortia in the room. Hello. Achievable and realistic things we can accomplish in the next 1, 3, and 5 years. Coordinated priorities, bring in more educators, start lobbying organization. More votes for just get something done. Seize the moment, let's go. A PR campaign, the programming that takes the last adopters over the adoption decision point. More proof this is effective, rewarding, it's helping student learning. Yeah, yes. Give me something to join and support. Great, love this. More understanding for who the audiences be, organizing federal grants, another vote for some sort of professional association, more curating and sharing. Get Gavin Newsom to talk to some other governors like that. Hi, California. Textbook promotions, something to join and support, more training for administrators. Excellent. All right, and our last Menti question before we go to breakouts. What are the best ways to engage this community, our community, in future conversations? So thoughts on how to outreach to more people, different people, et cetera, et cetera. Shrug, yeah. How everyone's feeling. Discord, okay. So we have some channels set up there from Open Education Conference, I know. Good job. Don't use email. I miss Twitter. That is like the #1 theme coming out of all of these sessions. Everybody misses Twitter. Open forums on campus with panelists. Oh, that's a great idea. Can we organize that? More webinars, more conversations, more different time zones, more convening, newsletter, create something we can join. Super good process. Blue Sky, another option. Discord, Signal, Telegram, WhatsApp, Mastodon, really anything but email and that thing that formerly used to be known as Twitter. Community forum, new venues, new opportunities. Great. Piggyback on sessions at conferences, that's great. Super. All right, so I'm in cutoff, so I think the time is to open the breakout rooms, which is also my responsibility. So you have been automatically assigned to a room. No one is required to stay. If you want to exit the conversation now, you're welcome to do so. But we hope you'll stay and engage in some more conversation a little bit more informally with us. So I'm going to open up the rooms now. If anyone has trouble accessing their room, just let me know. Christina, looks like your room packed it in early. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm just yapping away very fast on mute. We talked
us
about coming
out.
back at 2:55, so I was like,
Okay.
so
Yeah, we went
Okay.
in a little late, so I was gonna let it stay open for a minute, but they're closing now.
yeah, I see everybody coming back.
I think rooms are closed and people are back. I'm not sure what our closing words are.
We had some, we wrote them down. Don't leave, everybody.
Well, our closing is just that we so the follow-up for this conversation is that the organizations that have organized this, we will be following up with all of you regarding anything that happens after this. So if you are here, it means that you registered for this webcast and we have your email address. So please look out for that. You know, it's going to take us a couple of weeks to go through the responses for this and put together, you know, what next steps might look like. But please keep thinking about how this could impact your work and or how national coordination could play into your work and how you would be interested in being involved. So yes, happy Open Education Week, everybody. Every week is Open Education Week, but especially this week. And thanks for everything you all contributed. Oh, and thanks to Witchy for supporting these webinars. Really appreciate it. Liliana, I know you're not able to talk, but thank you for all you've done to coordinate these conversations.
Hi, everyone.